Catherine made an unexpected choice 4 minutes after Princess Charlotte sobbed her way out of a royal rehearsal. By dusk, Camilla had lost all private control over Charlotte's ceremonial responsibilities, was prohibited from correcting her without a parent present, and was threatened with exclusion from future family gatherings if she committed another transgression. However, that order wasn't Catherine's first action. Rather, it was her final one. And once she signed it, nothing, not even a royal title, a family justification, or a private appeal could change what had been recorded that night. The repercussions would go well beyond a single rehearsal. One whispered phrase that no camera could record was the first thing that drove Catherine that far. When Catherine eventually understood the words, the whole argument ceased to be about dress posture or palace etiquette, because Charlotte was too shaken. Through her daughter, it turned into a warning concerning Catherine's future. At 10:15 a.m., workers within Buckingham Palace started getting the state ballroom ready for a significant ceremonial rehearsal. Every youngster had been given a spot, every entrance had been timed, and every position had been marked. Charlotte held a little card that indicated her precise place in the procession and stood next to Catherine's designated spot. Catherine was then summoned away. In order to adjust the timing at the far end of the ballroom, a protocol officer needed her permission. Charlotte stayed with her assistant while William was somewhere else. The opportunity that altered the entire day was created by the interruption, which should have lasted less than 5 minutes. Camilla glanced first at Charlotte's hair, then at her coat, and finally at the gap between Charlotte and Catherine's vacant spot. The room abruptly transformed despite the muted words. A ceremonial coordinator put down his clipboard, and a wardrobe assistant ceased writing. As they awaited Catherine's return, 2 domestic workers turned to face the doorway. Charlotte maintained her composure. She said that the protocol officer had put her there after looking at the position card. The response was courteous, straightforward, and accurate. Camilla's face became tense. She questioned why Charlotte thought she should be standing so close to her mother when other family members had taken positions further back. The order then arrived. The organizer was told by Camilla to put Charlotte behind the junior attendants. The approved procession chart indicated otherwise, so he hesitated. The crew had examined and approved Charlotte's location that morning. The Wales family's entire visual order would change if she were moved. Camilla gave the same command again, more slowly this time. Catherine was still on the other side of the ballroom when Charlotte turned to face the entryway. More than the words, the staff recalled the stillness. No one interfered with the Queen or opposed her. Charlotte became aware that she was standing by herself as everyone waited for someone else to take action. At last, she inquired as to whether she had made a mistake. Camilla took a step forward and spoke in a tone intended only for Charlotte. Only the last words were heard by the assistant, but the impact was instantaneous. Charlotte's shoulders slumped. Without turning around, she turned over the position card and left the ballroom. "Hello, folks. Did Catherine have the right to shield Charlotte from Camilla? If you agree with Catherine and Charlotte, write that Catherine was correct in the comments. Please like, share, and subscribe before this narrative continues, as anyone who genuinely supports Catherine cannot remain silent while her daughter is humiliated in the palace. Camilla didn't need to exercise her queenly authority on a youngster because she already possessed it. Therefore, if Charlotte was deserving of protection, let Catherine know that she wasn't alone." The assistant discovered Charlotte by the private staircase at 10:40 a.m., trying not to scream and pleading solely for her mother. There was no boisterous situation, simply a child who had been taught to maintain composure in public, but was suddenly unable to clarify what had been spoken. Charlotte wanted to know if she could still stand next to Catherine when she got there. Charlotte, the assistant, and 2 documents arrived in Catherine's private sitting room at 11:05 a.m. The official procession chart was the first. The second was a modified version created following Catherine's departure. Charlotte's name had been pushed back and crossed out. There was a scribbled directive from Camilla's office next to the adjustment. Instead of yelling, Catherine asked for names. 5 witnesses were identified by the assistant. Before the afternoon was out, Catherine insisted that each of them provide written statements. She then inquired as to what Camilla had said in a whisper. The aide disclosed one fact that caused Catherine to close the folder and grab for the phone, even though Charlotte was still refusing to speak. Camilla had wondered why Charlotte thought she would be able to stand next to her mother forever. First, Catherine asked for a private apology. Before dusk, Camilla's reaction would kick off an urgent family gathering. The ambiance in Catherine's sitting room shifted as the door closed at 11:12 a.m. Charlotte stayed by her mother's side, tightly gripping the sleeve. With the 2 procession charts, the assistant stood close to the hearth. One had been altered, while the other was pristine. Looking from the papers to her daughter, Catherine started by posing the most straightforward query. Before she exited the ballroom, what happened? Charlotte made an effort to respond, but her words came slowly. Her hair appeared too soft for a formal procession, according to Camilla's initial reaction. The coat then arrived. Too obvious. The shade is too similar to Catherine's. Both had already been approved by the wardrobe assistant, but Camilla saw every detail as evidence that Charlotte had received more attention than she merited. The tone exacerbated the unpleasant remarks. Charlotte clarified that she had not selected the position next to Catherine, the coat or the haircut. Palace employees had allotted each detail. That did not sit well with Camilla. She questioned why Charlotte was always positioned so that cameras might spot her. The assistant took it as an accusation, even though it seemed like a question. Catherine's face remained unchanged. She requested the assistant to repeat what she had heard. The assistant did so with caution. Royal children need to understand that they are not the focal point of every space, according to Camilla. In response, Charlotte stated that she was merely using the cards that were provided to her. Camilla seemed more irritated by that response than anything else. The timing records later obtained from the rehearsal desk indicate that Camilla summoned the ceremonial coordinator at 10:34 a.m. Charlotte should be moved 3 spots back behind 2 junior attendants and away from Catherine's position, she told him. Since no such modification had been authorized, he hesitated. Camilla then informed him that the Queen's directive was sufficient approval. At that point, protocol turned into power for the first time. Charlotte glanced at her card. Her name appeared next to Catherine's. Silently, she questioned if the first strategy was flawed. Plans may be changed once people started to think their position was permanent, Camilla retorted. That statement was heard by a number of employees. They didn't move. They didn't say anything. Camilla then moved in closer. The assistant noticed Charlotte's expression, but was unable to hear every word that came after. The color vanished after the confidence did. After folding the card in half, Charlotte requested to go. Walking away would simply demonstrate her unpreparedness for serious royal duties, Camilla warned her. After a minute more of trying to restore her composure, Charlotte turned to face the hallway. The assistant trailed her at 10:40 a.m. Catherine listened uninterrupted within the sitting room. Charlotte was not asked to defend herself by her. She didn't advise her to have courage. She did not use a generational misunderstanding as a justification for what had occurred. Rather, she inquired as to whether Charlotte would like Camilla to talk to her once more that day. Charlotte gave a headshake. The first decision was resolved by that response. Catherine told her private secretary to get in touch with the senior protocol officer at 11:28 a.m. The duration of the call was 6 minutes. He double-checked that morning to confirm that Charlotte's position had been authorized 2 days prior. It could not be changed by anyone in Camilla's office. More significantly, the coordinator was instructed to implement the modification without telling Catherine. The wardrobe approval sheet was then sought by Catherine. At 11:43 a.m. it arrived. All of Charlotte's accessories, shoes, hair, and coat had been approved. All of the ballroom criticisms had already been examined and resolved. So why go after them? The solution was starting to take shape. Catherine requested a private discussion with Camilla at 12:05 p.m. She didn't call for punishment. She made no threats of exposing. She made 3 requests. The original procession position would be restored. Charlotte would get a direct apology, and it was promised that she would never again be reprimanded in private without the presence of Catherine William or an authorized Wales assistance. Camilla took a while to reply. While Charlotte sat in the adjacent room with her assistants, Catherine waited next to her for 15 minutes. The reply call arrived around 12:20 p.m. Camilla gave a forceful response. Since, in her opinion, there had been no insult, there would be no apology. According to her, Charlotte had gotten the appropriate royal discipline and needed to realize that being Catherine's daughter did not exempt her from punishment. Then followed the sentence that put an end to any possibility of a peaceful conclusion. According to Camilla, the Wales family had grown too used to being viewed as the future, as if the present was no longer important. Finally, Catherine heard the actual argument. This had nothing to do with a coat hair, or even Charlotte's position. It has to do with who stood next to her. Catherine hung up the phone at 12:32 p.m. and did not move. Camilla's statements had a clear significance. Because Charlotte misinterpreted protocol, she had not been corrected. She had been singled out because Camilla could no longer ignore the coming threat, symbolized by her position next to Catherine. Catherine refrained from becoming enraged. She requested that a formal record be started by her private secretary. The first witness arrived at 12:41 p.m. The consent paperwork that the palace team had signed was carried by the wardrobe assistant. She attested to the fact that Charlotte's looks had been examined before to rehearsal and that no issues had been brought up. She also recalled Camilla glancing at Charlotte, then at Catherine's vacant spot, and finally wondering why the infant had to be placed so prominently. 12:56 p.m., the second witness showed up. The directive to relocate Charlotte had been given to him, the ceremonial organizer. His story was important. He clarified that any last-minute changes had to go through the senior protocol officer, as the procession plan had been approved beforehand. That was not the case. Camilla gave him clear instructions. Additionally, he verified something Catherine had not yet noticed. An assistant from Camilla's office brought over an updated copy of the chart after Charlotte left the ballroom. The modification felt erratic, so it was handwritten and initialed in the lower corner. The document was put on Catherine's desk at 1:14 p.m. Charlotte's name has one line through it. She trailed the junior attendants by a second. There was a small instruction next to it. Get away from the Princess of Wales. It has nothing to do with posture. They had nothing to do with timing. They have to do with being apart. The line was recited twice by Catherine. She then requested William. William came through the private passageway at 1:27 p.m. All he had been informed was that Catherine needed him, and Charlotte was upset. The scenario became evident as soon as he examined the chart's witness testimony and Charlotte's folded position card. Anger was his initial response. Quick, safeguarding, individual. Before he could go, Catherine stopped him. This could not turn into a conflict based just on feelings, she said. Camilla would minimize the incident to a family argument and dismiss fury as an overreaction. Creating a record that could never be altered was the only way to stop that. William paid attention. He then took a seat. The assistant who trailed Charlotte into the hallway made her statement at 1:39 p.m. She talked about how the ballroom was silent, how Charlotte asked if she had done something wrong, and how her expression changed when Camilla leant in. She remembered the last words, but she was unable to repeat the whispered sentence. Not all the time. Catherine felt uneasy about that piece. It alluded to a warning about what was ahead, something Charlotte was still too terrified to discuss. 5 statements had been gathered at 2:05 p.m. Everybody entered the room from a different spot. The same sequence was described by each: criticism, shifting positions, a personal comment. Charlotte distressed is leaving. One child's recollection was no longer the basis for the evidence. Catherine gave her secretary instructions to create a sealed folder at 2:18 p.m. The initial plan for the procession, the modified chart, the wardrobe permission, the 5 statements, and the written account of Camilla's reluctance to apologize were all found within. Another document was added by William. The limitation order was in draft form. The wording was restricted but firm. Camilla would no longer monitor Charlotte, privately adjust her ceremonial position, provide directions to her servants, or correct her without a parent or approved aide present. Camilla's attendance at family gatherings, including the Wales children, would be reviewed in the case of another infraction. At 2:31 p.m., William signed the last page. That signature changed the dispute. Charlotte's mother was being played by Catherine. William was both the Prince of Wales and her father. Collectively, they were no longer requesting that Camilla exercise moderation. They were getting ready to take away her autonomy. Princess Anne was informed of the emergency meeting at 2:46 p.m. Camilla was not contacted by Anne. She called William. She began by inquiring as to whether Catherine had obtained the modified chart. William said yes. Then Anne inquired as to whether the folder had been updated with the previous household complaints. William did not understand. A pause occurred. Anne explained that staff had raised concerns before, remarks regarding the children of Wales, attempts to reposition them during appearances. After William and Catherine left the room, quiet instructions were given. No one wanted another palace dispute. Therefore, every issue had been resolved in secret. Silence had provided tranquility. However, it has also resulted in repetition. Anne asked to attend the meeting at 5:30 p.m. William thought she was trying to settle things down. Her answer dispelled all question. Do not enter that room, believing this began today. It didn't. At 5:30 p.m., the audience room within Buckingham Palace was sealed. Doors closed, curtains drawn. 2 senior advisors sat waiting. Camilla entered, expecting a family talk. Carrying the sealed folder, Catherine came in. William took the seat beside her. Anne selected the chair across from Camilla. Nobody offered tea. The timeline was where Catherine started. Charlotte had assumed the role that the protocol office had designated at 10:15 a.m. Camilla gave the order to switch positions at 10:34 a.m. Charlotte stormed out of the rehearsal at 10:40 a.m. Camilla rejected a private apology at 12:20 p.m., characterizing the event as royal discipline. Before Catherine could finish the first witness statement, Camilla cut her off. She claimed that a standard correction had been misinterpreted by the room. She contended that children in public life could not expect their parents' presence to soften every instruction. Catherine refrained from arguing. The folder was opened by her. The first item was the clothing approval sheet. Charlotte had previously cleared her presentation shoes, hair, and coat. After glancing at the page, Camilla wrote it off as unimportant. The second document was positioned next to it by Catherine, the original chart for the procession. Catherine's place was followed by Charlotte's name. The modified copy then arrived. Charlotte's name had a line through it. She was shoved behind the junior attendants by another mark. The directive that altered the morning's significance was written in the margin. Get away from the Princess of Wales. The room fell silent. According to Camilla, the wording was interpreted too literally. She asserted that the instructions' sole purpose was to increase spacing. One advisor questioned why the modification was not accompanied by a measurement. There was no response. The first statement was read by Catherine. The wardrobe assistant recalled Camilla inquiring as to why Charlotte was often positioned in areas where cameras may capture her. The coordinator of the ceremony affirmed that he had been informed that the Queen's directive constituted sufficient approval. According to the assistant, Charlotte asked if she had done something incorrectly. The same sequence, 3 voices. Leaning back, Camilla said that employees frequently repeated what they thought senior royals wanted to hear. William started talking at that point. He said that the witnesses had not seen each other's testimonies and had been questioned independently and at various times. Because the event matched, so did their words. He then set Charlotte's position card on the table folded. It still had her name on it, but it was little and wrinkled in the middle. Camilla averted her gaze. William declared that no one would change Charlotte's ceremonial responsibilities without her parents' or the Wales household's consent. Camilla retorted that parental preference could not be used to determine family standing. In response, William stated that he did not want to protect his daughter. It was a line. The suggested limitations were then described by Catherine. Charlotte would not be privately supervised by Camilla. In a parade, she refused to move Charlotte. She refused to give the child's assistants instructions. Unless William, Catherine, or an authorized representative were present, she would not correct Charlotte. The weight was in the last clause. Camilla's involvement in ceremonies involving the Wales children would be reviewed in the event of another occurrence. Camilla's face became stern. She accused Catherine of attacking the Queen's reputation after one awkward conversation. A private apology could have resolved the issue, Catherine retorted. Camilla had opted for rejection. The rest was inevitable because, to the documentation and witnesses, Anne then opened a second folder. Camilla had thought the discussion was solely about Charlotte until that point. That was altered by Anne. She recounted a previous reception in which one of Camilla's employees attempted to relocate Prince George without first talking to his parents. She remembered a church rehearsal in which, after Catherine had left the room, one of the Wales children had received harsh correction. She brought up 2 complaints from the home about comments that the kids were getting too much attention and were being trained to act like the next reign had started. Every grievance had been resolved discreetly. No written restriction, no public dispute, and no repercussions. Anne added, silence had been mistaken for permission, looking directly at Camilla. After pausing for a few moments, the private secretary resumed writing. Camilla disputed the assertions. She questioned why there had never been a formal family gathering. In response, Anne said that everyone had spent years defending unity, even if it meant asking younger family members to bear the discomfort. That agreement was no longer in effect. One advisor asked to see the earlier notes. Copies were handed across the table by Anne. Dates, locations, employee names, and brief transcripts of talks that had previously appeared too insignificant to record, but now established a pattern that was impossible to ignore. One morning, Catherine had come into the room ready to defend. Anne had come ready to reveal years. The private secretary presented Camilla with the restriction notice at 6:42 p.m. and asked her to confirm receipt. Camilla declined. She shoved the parchment back across the table, claiming that Catherine lacked the power to put restrictions on the Queen. It was not returned by the senior advisor. He turned to the last page, which was already signed by William at 2:31 p.m. Then he answered calmly, making the response definitive. It cannot be enforced by the Princess of Wales alone. The Prince of Wales has previously shown that he is capable of doing so. Camilla was silent for a few seconds. The final opening she intended to use had been eliminated by the signature at the bottom of the page. Catherine was no longer requesting civility, William's authority. Anne's backing and the counsel of 2 high-ranking palace officials were all included in the written boundaries. One counselor gave a practical explanation of the notification around 6:45 p.m. With secret instructions, Camilla's office was unable to get in touch with Charlotte's assistants. Without a Wales representative present, it was unable to alter her position, approve her attire, call her for correction, or set up rehearsals. Now Catherine and William would receive all instructions pertaining to Charlotte. The officials in the Charlotte area were also held accountable by the notification. Any assistant who got an unapproved request had to document it and notify the Wales home right away. No silent correction, no private reorganization. No instruction was disguised as routine and went through an assistant. Every side door that let influence to function without witnesses had been shut by Catherine. Camilla was still able to attend, talk, and carry out her duties, but her power was now clearly limited in Charlotte's presence. Camilla inquired as to whether the restriction would be documented in the palace's official records. The advisor said, yes. The impact of just one word was greater than that of the preceding words. One could deny a private disagreement. A family dispute may be buried, eased, or explained in a new way in the future. Another issue was assigned notice. Names, dates, witnesses, and conditions were recorded. If someone tried to undo it, they would first have to justify its issuance. The warning phrase was read out by the private secretary at 6:51 p.m. Camilla's attendance at events involving the Wales children would be considered right away if another allegation about Charlotte was substantiated by staff proof. She continued to participate in public life, notwithstanding the phrasing. It performed a more accurate action. The idea that she could behave without repercussions was eliminated. Camilla gripped the paper more tightly. She didn't turn to face Catherine. Rather, she asked the advisors if they were aware of the harm that could result from such a restriction if it became public. One of them responded that permitting the same issue to recur after the palace had been alerted would cause more harm. It was there. The focus of the debate had changed from reputation to accountability. Catherine signed under William's name at 6:58 p.m. Her hand remained steady. Before the evening was over, she requested that a copy be delivered to Charlotte's home, added the time and closed the folder, and silently observed. Calm now but immobile, William stayed by Catherine's side. The notification was given to Camilla. She turned to face Catherine for the first time that night. There was no apology. Catherine didn't ask again either. Camilla's private secretary called to confirm receipt at 7:10 p.m. The restriction was in effect. Charlotte was put back in her former position in the procession. Her permitted attire didn't change. Throughout the subsequent rehearsal and the actual ceremony, a member of the Wales household would remain at her side. As if nothing had happened, preparations went on outside the chamber. Employees brought flowers down the hallway. Doors were inspected by footmen. Timing sheets were examined by musicians. The palace moved with its customary dexterity, concealing the recent drawing of a boundary among the family. Polished smiles would be visible to the public. The warning had been seen by the workers. Just after 7:30 p.m., Catherine went back to the Wales apartment. She anticipated that Charlotte would be relieved to learn that her position had been reinstated. Rather, Charlotte silently thanked her and inquired as to whether Camilla would still attend the ceremony. Catherine promised to do so. Charlotte's gaze dropped. Catherine was more disturbed by that response than by the tears. Dinner was brought in at 8:05 p.m., but Charlotte hardly touched it. She gave courteous answers to inquiries. She claimed to be exhausted. She maintained that she was all right. However, she turned to face the door each time she heard footsteps outside the room. Catherine started to realize that the restriction had resolved the apparent issue rather than the concealed one. Later, at 8:47 p.m., Catherine discovered Charlotte in her bedroom awake. Charlotte had flattened the procession card under a book on the bedside table, as if she was attempting to get rid of the crease. "The card will be replaced in the morning," Catherine stated as she sat next to her. Charlotte didn't inquire about the card. "Mummy, can someone move you away too?" she inquired. Catherine was halted by the question. She had thought Camilla's private comment was intended to make Charlotte feel inferior up until that point. She saw another possibility now. Fearing for herself alone, Charlotte had not left the ballroom. Something about Catherine had come to her attention. What had Camilla muttered? Catherine wondered. Charlotte paused. The first few sentences were then spoken by her. "You can now stand next to your mother." Catherine realized all of a sudden that the meeting was still ongoing. Catherine held out. When Charlotte finished speaking, her voice was hardly audible above a whisper. "Even though you are standing beside your mother right now, she won't always be able to determine who belongs where." Catherine remained silent. The words had nothing to do with ceremonial spacing, a child's posture, or a clothing. Charlotte had comprehended enough of Camilla's message regarding Catherine's destiny to be alarmed. Everything was altered by that. Charlotte was requested to repeat the sentence by Catherine at 8:52 p.m. It wasn't because she didn't trust her, but rather because the language was crucial. Charlotte said it again. After listening, Catherine inquired as to whether anyone else had spoken. Charlotte clarified that Camilla had informed her that certain individuals were being assigned too near to the center ahead of schedule. When individuals got too comfortable, she continued. Royal regulations could be altered. Charlotte was unsure if Camilla was referring to Catherine's place in the family or her role in the rehearsal. Catherine did. She embraced Charlotte and assured her that no adult had the authority to hold her accountable for disputes between the family's elder members. Charlotte had done what she was told. There was nothing wrong with her. The embarrassment should have gone somewhere else. Catherine called William into the sitting room at 9:06 p.m. After leaving the bedroom, she reiterated Charlotte's precise words. William's expression shifted. Charlotte was shielded from private correction by the limitations, but the underlying issue remained unresolved. A youngster had been brought into a conflict between control succession and influence by Camilla. At 9:14 p.m., William called the palace secretary. The notice was reopened. They introduced a new clause. Camilla was not allowed to talk to their children about William's future reign, Catherine's future function, or the status of the Wales family. Camilla's position at family rituals would be reviewed if George, Charlotte, or Louis were involved in status conflicts. This was no longer a caution, it was a wall. Anne was given a copy of the revision at 9:31 p.m. She responded right away. She was in favor of it. She stated that kids couldn't be employed as messengers in conflicts they didn't start or comprehend. The updated notice was delivered to Camilla's workplace at 9:48 p.m. There was no attempt to resume the conversation, no protest, and no phone call. At 10:03 p.m., a letter acknowledgement was received. Catherine's last demand had been approved by the palace. Charlotte went back to the state ballroom the next morning. In her place was a fresh, unmarked procession card. Her name showed up next to Catherine precisely where it had before. The approval of the clothing did not change. Every command was audible to a senior Wales aide standing nearby. A few minutes later, Camilla came in. She noticed that the position had been restored. She noticed the assistant. She remained silent. The room was informed everything by that quiet. The rehearsal started. Charlotte raised her head, looked at the card once, and took her place. Besides her stood Catherine. From the other side of the room, William observed. Anne stayed in the back, silent but vigilant. Charlotte was not moved by anyone. Nobody asked why she should be there. Nobody went up to her in private. The ceremony seemed effortless to the general public. Cameras recorded royal perfection, smiles, and order. The paper contained in the palace record, which altered who could communicate with Charlotte, who could guide her, and who would respond if another line was crossed, was what they failed to capture. Catherine didn't make a big deal out of it. It worked because of this. She didn't respond to humiliation by making a big show in public. She assembled witnesses. She got the paperwork. She insisted on a personal apology. She eliminated the chance for it to occur again when that failed. However, the triumph came at a price. Charlotte would recall realizing her mother was missing when she turned to face a doorway. Later that evening, Catherine would recall her daughter's query. Could someone also relocate her mother? Royal smiles could not mend the harm of trust. Camilla continued to rule as queen. She maintained her household ceremonial position and title. However, she had lost something vital in the presence of the Wales kids. Unquestionable entry. Every command would be heard after that day. Every modification would be noted. A witness would be needed for each private correction. Camilla had not been cut off from the family by Catherine. The shadows had been eliminated by her. Hello, folks. Please leave a remark stating that Catherine safeguarded her child if she was correct to draw this line. If Charlotte deserves a mother who would oppose royal authority on her behalf, please like, share, and subscribe. The person in charge benefits from silence. The individual compelled to oppose it derives strength from support. And the conflict in the next palace would be even more intense. In the following video, Anne opens a sealed file that has 3 previous complaints about the Wales children, including a handwritten message from a senior assistant that William was never seen, who ordered it buried, and why Catherine was never meant to see it, are revealed in the last line.